Chapter 1. Joshua's Commission and Preparation. Joshua stood by the Jordan River, staring at the land God had promised to the people of Israel. The weight of responsibility was heavy on him, but he remembered that God was with him, just as he had been with Moses. After the death of Moses, God spoke directly to Joshua, the son of Nun. God said, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses." God reminded Joshua of the promise he had made to Moses. The land from the wilderness and Lebanon to the great Euphrates River, including all the land of the Hittites, would belong to the children of Israel. God's voice was firm yet comforting as he declared, "There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee." Joshua listened intently as God gave him clear instructions. "Be strong and of a good courage. For unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land, which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law, which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest." God gave Joshua the key to success. He said, "This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success." God ended with a powerful reminder. "Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest." Joshua took these words to heart. Strengthened by God's promises, he called together the officers of the people. He told them, "Pass through the host, and command the people, saying, Prepare you victuals. For within 3 days ye shall pass over this Jordan, to go and to possess the land, which the Lord your God giveth you to possess it." The people began to prepare themselves for the journey ahead. Joshua then spoke specifically to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. These tribes had already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan, as Moses had promised them. But Joshua reminded them of their duty. "Remember the word which Moses the servant of the Lord commanded you, saying, The Lord your God hath given you rest, and hath given you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your cattle shall remain in the land which Moses gave you on this side Jordan. But ye shall pass before your brethren armed, all the mighty men of valor, and help them, until the Lord hath given your brethren rest, as he hath given you, and they also have possessed the land which the Lord your God giveth them. Then ye shall return unto the land of your possession, and enjoy it, which Moses the Lord's servant gave you on this side Jordan toward the sun rising." The people of these tribes agreed without hesitation. They answered Joshua, saying, "All that thou commandest us we will do, and whithersoever thou sendest us we will go. According as we hearkened unto Moses in all things, so will we hearken unto thee. Only the Lord thy God be with thee, as he was with Moses. Whosoever he be that doth rebel against thy commandment, and will not hearken unto thy words in all that thou commandest him, he shall be put to death. Only be strong and of a good courage." Joshua felt a wave of encouragement as the people reaffirmed their loyalty and trust in his leadership. With God's words echoing in his mind and the people's unity fueling his resolve, Joshua stood ready to lead Israel into the land of promise. The task ahead was daunting. The Jordan River stood before them, flowing strong and wide. Beyond it lay the fortified city of Jericho and the vast land filled with nations that would not yield easily. But Joshua was not alone. He had God's promise, his presence, and his guidance. As he prepared to take the first step of this great journey, he knew that obedience to God's law and faith in his power were the keys to success. Joshua's commission marked the beginning of a new chapter for Israel. With courage and faith, he was ready to lead the people into the fulfillment of God's promises. The story of Joshua's preparation teaches us that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness, and that His presence is all we need to face any challenge. Chapter 2. Spies in Jericho and Rahab's Faith. Joshua, the leader of Israel, was preparing the people to cross the Jordan River and take the land God had promised them. Before moving forward, he sent 2 men to spy on the city of Jericho. He told them, "Go view the land, even Jericho." The 2 men quietly set out on their mission, knowing the task was dangerous. When the spies arrived in Jericho, they entered the house of a woman named Rahab, who was known as a harlot. They stayed there, hoping to avoid suspicion. Rahab's house was on the city wall, making it an ideal place for the spies to gather information and plan their escape if needed. News of their arrival, however, spread quickly. Someone informed the king of Jericho, saying, "Behold, there came men in hither tonight of the children of Israel to search out the country." The king immediately sent messengers to Rahab, commanding her to bring out the men who had entered her house. He said, "Bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thine house, for they be come to search out all the country." Rahab made a brave decision. She took the 2 spies and hid them on the roof of her house, covering them with stalks of flax she had laid out to dry. When the king's messengers arrived, she told them, "There came men unto me, but I wist not whence they were. And it came to pass about the time of shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whither the men went I wot not. Pursue after them quickly, for ye shall overtake them." Believing her words, the messengers hurried away to search for the spies along the road to the Jordan River. After the king's men had left, Rahab went up to the roof to speak with the spies. She said to them, "I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you, when ye came out of Egypt, and what ye did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites, that were on the other side Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt, neither did there remain any more courage in any man, because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and in earth beneath." Rahab's words revealed her faith in the God of Israel. She believed that He was the one true God and that He would give the land to His people. She then asked the spies to show kindness to her and her family in return for the kindness she had shown them. "Now, therefore, I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have shewed you kindness, that you will also shew kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token, and that you will save alive my father, and my mother, and my brethren, and my sisters, and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death." The spies agreed to her request, but they gave her specific instructions. They said, "Our life for yours, if ye utter not this our business. And it shall be, when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with thee." They told her to tie a scarlet thread in the window, through which she let them down, and to bring her family into her house when the Israelites came to take the city. They warned her, "Whosoever shall go out of the doors of thy house into the street, his blood shall be upon his head, and we will be guiltless. And whosoever shall be with thee in the house, his blood shall be on our head, if any hand be upon him." Rahab let the spies down through a window using a cord, for her house was on the city wall. She told them, "Get you to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you, and hide yourselves there 3 days, until the pursuers be returned, and afterward may ye go your way." The spies followed her advice, escaping to the mountains and hiding there until it was safe to return to Joshua. When the spies returned to Joshua, they gave him their report. They said, "Truly the Lord hath delivered into our hands all the land. For even all the inhabitants of the country do faint because of us." Their mission was a success, and they were encouraged by the faith of Rahab and the fear of the people in Jericho. Rahab's act of faith and her protection of the spies would not only save her life and the lives of her family, but would also make her a part of God's greater plan. Through her faith and courage, she became an ancestor of Jesus Christ, showing that God's grace and mercy extend to all who trust in Him. The story of the spies in Jericho and Rahab's faith teaches us about God's power, his ability to fulfill his promises, and his willingness to use anyone who believes in him for his purposes. Rahab's courage and faith remind us that trusting in God can lead to amazing blessings and a place in his greater story. Chapter 3. Crossing the Jordan. Joshua and the Israelites stood on the edge of the Jordan River, ready to cross into the land that God had promised them. It was a moment they had waited for, but the river was overflowing its banks. Crossing it seemed impossible, yet Joshua knew that God had a plan, and he trusted him completely. Early in the morning, Joshua rose and led the people to the banks of the Jordan, where they camped before crossing. After 3 days, Joshua called the officers of the people and gave them instructions. The officers went through the camp, saying, "When ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests the Levites bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place, and go after it. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Come not near unto it, that ye may know the way by which ye must go, for ye have not passed this way heretofore." Joshua also spoke to the people and told them, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." The people prepared themselves, setting their hearts on God, knowing that something miraculous was about to happen. The next day, Joshua spoke to the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant. He said, "Take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass over before the people." The priests lifted the Ark and began to move toward the river, leading the way for the Israelites. Then the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, "This day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that, as I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. And thou shalt command the priests that bear the ark of the covenant, saying, When ye are come to the brink of the water of Jordan, ye shall stand still in Jordan." Joshua told the people what the Lord had said. He said, "Hereby ye shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Hivites, and the Perizzites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Jebusites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth passeth over before you into Jordan." Joshua instructed the people to choose 12 men, one from each tribe of Israel. These men would have a special role to play in what was about to happen. Then Joshua told them, "It shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon an heap." The people watched as the priests carried the ark of the covenant toward the river. The moment the soles of their feet touched the edge of the water, something amazing happened. The waters of the Jordan stopped flowing. The water piled up in a great heap far upstream, at a city called Adam, and the rest of the river drained away toward the Dead Sea. The riverbed became dry, and the priests stood firmly in the middle of the river, holding the Ark of the Covenant. The Israelites began to cross the Jordan on dry ground. Families walked together, amazed at the miracle before their eyes. Thousands upon thousands of people crossed the river, and not one of them had to step into the water. The Ark of the Covenant, which represented the presence of God, remained in the center of the river as the people passed by. Once everyone had crossed, the Lord spoke to Joshua again. He said, "Take you 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe of man, and command ye them, saying, Take you hence out of the midst of Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and ye shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where ye shall lodge this night." Joshua called the 12 men who had been chosen, one from each tribe, and told them to pick up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, where the priests were standing. They were to carry the stones to the place where the Israelites would camp that night. The stones would serve as a memorial to remind future generations of what God had done that day. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, in the place where the priests had stood. These stones would remain there as a testimony to the miracle. After everything was done, the Lord told Joshua to command the priests to come up out of the Jordan. As soon as the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant stepped onto dry land, the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed its banks as before. The people camped at a place called Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. There, Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been taken from the Jordan. He spoke to the Israelites, saying, "When your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, 'What mean these stones?' Then ye shall let your children know, saying, 'Israel came over this Jordan on dry land.' For the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan from before you, until ye were passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us, until we were gone over, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that ye might fear the Lord your God forever." The crossing of the Jordan was a moment of great faith and obedience for the Israelites. It showed them that God was with them, just as he had been with Moses. It reminded them of his power and his promises. The stones at Gilgal stood as a reminder for generations to come that God is faithful and that his power is beyond anything we can imagine. Through this miracle, the people of Israel learned to trust God even more. They saw that when they followed his commands and walked in faith, he would make a way where there seemed to be no way. The crossing of the Jordan marked the beginning of their journey into the Promised Land, a land flowing with milk and honey, just as God had promised. Chapter 4. Memorial Stones and Covenant Renewal. The Israelites had just crossed the Jordan River on dry ground, a miracle that showed God's mighty power. After the crossing, the Lord spoke to Joshua, giving him special instructions to help the people remember what he had done for them. God told Joshua to choose 12 men, one from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. He said, "Take you 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe of man, and command ye them, saying, Take you hence out of the midst of Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and ye shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where ye shall lodge this night." Joshua called the 12 men who had been chosen and told them to go back into the middle of the Jordan River. He said to them, "Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of Jordan, and take ye up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according unto the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, 'What mean ye by these stones?' Then ye shall answer them, that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over Jordan, the waters of Jordan were cut off. And these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever." The men did as Joshua commanded. Each of them carried a stone from the middle of the Jordan, where the priests holding the ark of the covenant had stood. They brought the stones to the place where they would camp that night and set them up as a memorial. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, at the place where the priests had stood. These stones would remain there as a testimony to the miracle that had taken place. The priests who carried the ark of the covenant stayed in the middle of the river until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua to tell the people was completed. Once everyone had crossed, Joshua told the priests to come up out of the Jordan. As soon as the priests stepped onto dry land, the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed its banks as before. The people camped at a place called Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. It was there that Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been taken from the Jordan. He spoke to the Israelites, saying, "When your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, 'What mean these stones?' Then ye shall let your children know, saying, 'Israel came over this Jordan on dry land.' For the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan from before you, until ye were passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us, until we were gone over, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that ye might fear the Lord your God forever." At Gilgal, the Lord commanded Joshua to renew the covenant with the people of Israel. This was an important moment, as it reminded the Israelites of their special relationship with God and their responsibility to follow his laws. The Lord told Joshua to make flint knives and circumcise the sons of Israel. This was because all the men who had come out of Egypt, who were old enough to fight, had died in the wilderness during the 40 years of wandering. These men had been circumcised, but their sons, born during the journey, had not been. Circumcision was a sign of the covenant between God and his people, so it was necessary to renew this practice before entering the Promised Land. Joshua obeyed the Lord and circumcised the sons of Israel at a place called Gibeath-Haaraloth. After the men were circumcised, they stayed in the camp until they were healed. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "This day have I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you." Because of this, the place was called Gilgal, which means rolling, to remember what God had done. While they were camped at Gilgal, the Israelites kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month in the plains of Jericho. This was the first Passover they had celebrated in the Promised Land. They ate unleavened bread and roasted corn from the land. The next day, the manna that had sustained them in the wilderness stopped. From that time on, they ate the produce of the land of Canaan. These events at Gilgal marked a new beginning for the people of Israel. They had crossed into the land God had promised to their ancestors, and they were ready to take possession of it. The memorial stones reminded them of God's power and faithfulness. The covenant renewal reminded them of their special relationship with Him, and the Passover reminded them of His deliverance from Egypt. The story of the memorial stones and the covenant renewal at Gilgal teaches us that it is important to remember what God has done for us. When we take time to look back at His faithfulness, it strengthens our faith and gives us courage to face the future. God's promises never fail, and His power is always enough to accomplish His plans. Chapter 5: Conquest of Jericho and Initial Victories. The people of Israel were camped at Gilgal, near the city of Jericho. Jericho was a strong city with high walls, and its gates were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. No one went in, and no one came out. But the Lord had a plan to give the city into the hands of His people. The Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, "See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor. And ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass, that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up every man straight before him." Joshua called the priests and told them to take up the ark of the covenant. He instructed 7 priests to carry 7 trumpets of ram's horns and to go before the ark and saw. Then he gave the people their instructions. He said, "Pass on, and compass the city, and let him that is armed pass on before the ark of the Lord." The priests took the ark, and the 7 priests with the trumpets went before it. Armed men marched ahead of them, and the rest of the people followed behind. They all moved in silence, except for the sound of the trumpets being blown. They marched around the city once, just as the Lord had commanded, and then returned to the camp to rest. For 6 days the Israelites marched around the city once each day. The priests blew their trumpets, and the people followed, but no one made a sound. The people obeyed Joshua's command to stay quiet. On the 7th day, they rose early, just as the sun was coming up. This day was different because they were to march around the city 7 times. The priests with the trumpets and the ark of the covenant led the way, and the people followed. As they marched, the trumpets sounded, filling the air with their steady blast. After the 7th time around the city, the priests blew a long blast on the trumpets, and Joshua gave the command. He said, "Shout, for the Lord hath given you the city. And the city shall be accursed, even it, and all that are therein, to the Lord. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And ye, in any wise keep yourselves from the accursed thing, lest ye make yourselves accursed, when ye take of the accursed thing, and make the camp of Israel a curse, and trouble it. But all the silver and gold, and vessels of brass and iron, are consecrated unto the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord." The people gave a great shout, and as they did, the walls of Jericho fell down flat. The Israelites charged straight into the city and took it, just as God had said. They destroyed everything in the city, men, women, children, animals, everything, as an offering to the Lord. But Rahab and her family were spared. Joshua had told the 2 spies to go to her house, and bring her out. They did as they were told, and Rahab, along with her family and all she had, was brought to safety outside the camp of Israel. Rahab and her family were saved because of her faith in God and her act of kindness toward the spies. The city was burned with fire, and all the gold, silver, and vessels of brass and iron were taken into the treasury of the Lord. Joshua made the people promise never to rebuild Jericho, saying, "Cursed be the man before the Lord, that riseth up and buildeth this city Jericho. He shall lay the foundation thereof in his firstborn, and in his youngest son shall he set up the gates of it." The Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. After the victory at Jericho, the Israelites faced another challenge. They set their sights on the city of Ai. Joshua sent men to spy on the city, and when they returned, they said, "Let not all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and smite Ai, and make not all the people to labor thither, for they are but few." About 3,000 men went up to fight against Ai, but they were defeated. The men of Ai struck down about 36 Israelites and chased the rest away. The people's hearts melted, and they were filled with fear. Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the ground before the ark of the Lord, along with the elders of Israel. They put dust on their heads and cried out to God. Joshua said, "Alas, O Lord God, wherefore hast thou at all brought this people over Jordan, to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? Would to God we had been content, and dwelt on the other side Jordan. O Lord, what shall I say, when Israel turneth their backs before their enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land shall hear of it, and shall environ us round, and cut off our name from the earth. And what wilt thou do unto thy great name?" The Lord answered Joshua, saying, "Get thee up, wherefore liest thou thus upon thy face? Israel hath sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant which I commanded them. For they have even taken of the accursed thing, and have also stolen, and dissembled also, and they have put it even among their own stuff. Therefore the children of Israel could not stand before their enemies, but turned their backs before their enemies, because they were accursed. Neither will I be with you any more, except ye destroy the accursed from among you." God told Joshua to sanctify the people and to deal with the sin in their midst. The next day, the tribes were brought before Joshua, and the guilty party was revealed. A man named Achan had taken some of the accursed things from Jericho and hidden them in his tent. Joshua confronted Achan, saying, "My son, give, I pray thee, glory to the Lord God of Israel, and make confession unto him. And tell me now what thou hast done. Hide it not from me." Achan admitted his sin, saying, "Indeed I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and thus have I done. When I saw among the spoils a goodly Babylonish garment, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels weight, then I coveted them, and took them. And behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver under it." The stolen items were found, and Achan, along with his family and all he had, was brought to the valley of Achor. There they were stoned and burned as a punishment for his sin. After this, the Lord's anger was turned away from Israel. Through these victories and challenges, the Israelites learned to trust and obey God completely. They saw that sin had serious consequences, but also that God's power and promises were faithful to those who followed him. Chapter 6: Central, Southern, and Northern Conquests. After dealing with Achan's sin, the Lord encouraged Joshua and the Israelites to move forward. God told Joshua, "Fear not, neither be thou dismayed. Take all the people of war with thee, and arise, go up to Ai. See, I have given into thy hand the king of Ai, and his people, and his city, and his land." This time, God gave Joshua a specific strategy to capture the city. Joshua and the people set an ambush behind Ai. By night, they positioned a group of soldiers outside the city, while the rest of the army approached from the front. In the morning, the king of Ai saw the Israelites and went out to fight them, just as they had before. But the Israelites pretended to flee, drawing the men of Ai away from the city. Once the city was unprotected, Joshua raised his spear as a signal. The soldiers in the ambush entered Ai, set it on fire, and destroyed it. When the men of Ai looked back and saw their city burning, they realized they were trapped. The Israelites turned and attacked, and Ai was completely defeated. The king of Ai was captured and killed, and the city was left in ruins. After the victory, Joshua built an altar to the Lord on Mount Ebal. There, the people offered sacrifices and worshiped God. Joshua also wrote the law of Moses on stones and read it aloud to the entire assembly, including women, children, and foreigners living among them. This act reminded everyone of God's covenant and their responsibility to obey his commands. Word of Israel's victory spread throughout the land, and the surrounding kings became afraid. In fear, 5 Amorite kings from the southern region joined forces to attack the Israelites. But before they could strike, the people of Gibeon, who lived nearby, came up with a clever plan. The Gibeonites disguised themselves as travelers from a faraway land. They wore old clothes, carried moldy bread, and pretended they had been on a long journey. They came to Joshua and asked to make a peace treaty with Israel. Without seeking the Lord's guidance, Joshua and the leaders believed their story and agreed to the treaty. A few days later, the Israelites discovered that the Gibeonites were actually their neighbors. Though the leaders were upset, they had to keep their promise to protect the Gibeonites because they had sworn an oath before the Lord. The Gibeonites became servants to the Israelites, but they were spared from destruction. Soon after, the 5 Amorite kings attacked Gibeon because of its alliance with Israel. The Gibeonites called for help, and Joshua and the Israelites came to their aid. The Lord encouraged Joshua, saying, "Fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee." Joshua and his army marched all night to Gibeon and surprised the enemy. The Lord caused confusion among the Amorite forces, and the Israelites defeated them. As the enemy fled, God sent large hailstones from heaven, killing more of them than the Israelites had. During the battle, Joshua prayed to the Lord, asking for the sun and moon to stand still so the Israelites could finish the fight. God answered Joshua's prayer, and the sun stayed in the sky for about a whole day. This miracle showed God's power and his support for Israel. The Amorite kings were captured and executed, and their cities were destroyed. After this victory, Joshua and the Israelites continued their conquest of the southern region. They captured and destroyed cities like Makkedah, Libnah, Lachish, and Hebron. Each victory was complete, leaving no survivors, as God had commanded. The Lord fought for Israel and gave them success in every battle. Next, Joshua turned his attention to the northern region. A large coalition of kings led by Jabin, king of Hazor, gathered to fight against Israel. Their armies were vast, with many soldiers, horses, and chariots. But the Lord reassured Joshua, saying, "Be not afraid because of them. For tomorrow about this time will I deliver them up all slain before Israel. Thou shalt hough their horses and burn their chariots with fire." Joshua and his army attacked the northern coalition at the waters of Merom. The Lord delivered the enemy into their hands, and the Israelites defeated them. As commanded, they hamstrung the horses and burned the chariots. Hazor, the leading city of the northern coalition, was captured and destroyed, along with its king. Joshua led Israel to victory over the northern cities, just as he had in the south. He left no survivors and carried out all the instructions God had given through Moses. The land was taken and divided among the tribes of Israel. The Bible tells us that Joshua made war a long time with the kings of the land. No city made peace with the Israelites except for Gibeon. All the others were taken by force. The Lord hardened the hearts of the kings so they would fight against Israel and be utterly destroyed. This was part of God's plan to give the land to his people and to fulfill his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The conquest of the land was not just about military victories. It was about showing God's power and faithfulness. The Israelites saw that when they trusted and obeyed God, he fought for them and gave them success. By the end of these campaigns, the land had rest from war. Joshua and the Israelites had conquered the central, southern, and northern regions, fulfilling God's command to take possession of the Promised Land. Through these victories, God's promise to his people was being fulfilled, and his name was glorified among the nations. Chapter 7. Division of the Land and Joshua's Farewell. After the land of Canaan had rest from war, it was time to divide the land among the tribes of Israel. The Lord told Joshua, "Thou art old and stricken in years, and there remaineth yet very much land to be possessed." Though there were still areas to be fully occupied, the major conquests were complete, and the time had come for each tribe to receive its inheritance. Joshua, along with Eleazar the priest and the leaders of the tribes, began the process of dividing the land. The land was given by lot, as the Lord commanded through Moses. This ensured that each tribe received its portion according to God's will. The tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh had already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan, as Moses had promised. Their land included fertile plains and cities well suited for their livestock. Before they crossed the Jordan to help their fellow Israelites conquer Canaan, these tribes had agreed to fight alongside their brothers. Now, their work was done, and they could return to their homes. Caleb, one of the faithful spies who had trusted God's promise many years earlier, came to Joshua with a special request. Caleb reminded Joshua of the promise Moses had made to him. He said, "Thou knowest the thing that the Lord said unto Moses the man of God concerning me and thee in Kadesh Barnea. 40 years old was I when Moses the servant of the Lord sent me from Kadesh Barnea to espy out the land. And I brought him word again, as it was in mine heart. Nevertheless my brethren that went up with me made the heart of the people melt. But I wholly followed the Lord my God." Caleb continued, "And now, behold, the Lord hath kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, even since the Lord spake this word unto Moses, while the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now, lo, I am this day 85 years old. As yet I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me. As my strength was then, even so is my strength now, for war, both to go out and to come in. Now therefore give me this mountain, whereof the Lord spake in that day. For thou heardest in that day how the Anakims were there, and that the cities were great and fenced. If so be the Lord will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said." Joshua blessed Caleb and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. Hebron had been a stronghold of the Anakim, a race of giants, but Caleb trusted God to give him victory. Hebron became a symbol of faith and courage, a reward for Caleb's wholehearted devotion to the Lord. The rest of the land was divided among the tribes, each receiving a portion according to their size and need. Cities were also set apart for the Levites, who did not receive a land inheritance. Instead, the Levites were given 48 cities scattered throughout the tribes, along with their surrounding pasture lands. These cities provided a place for the Levites to live and serve as spiritual leaders for the people. 6 of these cities were designated as cities of refuge. These were places where someone who had accidentally killed another person could flee for safety. In these cities, the accused could stay until their case was judged. If they were found innocent of intentional murder, they could remain in the city of refuge and be protected from revenge. These cities reminded the people of God's justice and mercy. When all the land was distributed, Joshua called the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. He commended them for their faithful service and reminded them of their responsibility to love and obey the Lord. Joshua said, "Take diligent heed to do the commandment and the law, which Moses the servant of the Lord charged you, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and to cleave unto him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul." Joshua then sent them back to their homes on the east side of the Jordan, blessing them and sending them away with riches and livestock from the spoils of war. Years passed, and Joshua grew very old. He gathered all the leaders of Israel, including the elders, judges, and officers, to give them his final instructions. Joshua reminded them of all that God had done for them. He said, "Ye have seen all that the Lord your God hath done unto all these nations because of you. For the Lord your God is he that hath fought for you. Joshua encouraged the people to remain faithful to God. He said, "Be therefore very courageous to keep and to do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, that ye turn not aside therefrom to the right hand or to the left, that ye come not among these nations, these that remain among you, neither make mention of the name of their gods, nor cause to swear by them, neither serve them, nor bow yourselves unto them, but cleave unto the Lord your God, as ye have done unto this day." Joshua warned the people that if they turned away from God and worshipped other gods, they would face his judgment. He reminded them that God had been faithful to fulfill his promises, but he would also be faithful to bring consequences if they disobeyed. Finally, Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem for a covenant renewal. He reminded them of their history, starting with Abraham, whom God had called out of a land of idolatry. Joshua recounted how God had delivered them from Egypt, parted the Red Sea, and given them victory over their enemies in the Promised Land. Joshua challenged the people, saying, "Now therefore fear the Lord, and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord. And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The people responded, "God forbid that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For the Lord our God, he it is that brought us up and our fathers out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, and which did those great signs in our sight, and preserved us in all the way wherein we went, and among all the people through whom we passed. And the Lord drave out from before us all the people, even the Amorites which dwelt in the land. Therefore will we also serve the Lord, for he is our God." Joshua made a covenant with the people that day, and set up a large stone under an oak tree as a witness. He said, "Behold, this stone shall be a witness unto us, for it hath heard all the words of the Lord which he spake unto us. It shall be therefore a witness unto you, lest ye deny your God." Not long after, Joshua, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. He was buried in the land of his inheritance at Timnath-Serah. The Bible tells us that Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived him, who had seen all the great works of the Lord. Through Joshua's leadership, the Israelites saw God's faithfulness, power, and love. They were reminded of their covenant with him and the importance of obedience. Joshua's life and words continue to inspire people to trust in God and choose to serve him wholeheartedly. If you have enjoyed learning about this and want to learn more about God's Word, check out our other videos here.